Hello everyone, welcome to episode 2, Highways and Hilltops. I'm Charlie.
And I'm Jody. We're glad you joined us as we continue recapping our 2024 summer road trip. Be sure to check out episode 1 and ride along with us on the first leg of our trip, traveling from our home in Oklahoma all the way to the east entrance of Glacier National Park in St. Mary, Montana. Today we're going to pick up in St. Mary, Montana and Glacier National Park, but first, we're going to rewind just a second to cover a couple of things we forgot to mention on the road from Billings to St. Mary. It's about 6 hours from Billings to St. Mary, and the drive has beautiful views and an abundance of wildlife. We saw elk, antelope, a ton of mule deer, wild turkey, and even some seagulls along the way. Y'all, I don't know what happened, but when I mapped us to the KOA from our last stop, it totally took us to the wrong place. It wasn't a bad hiccup, but it did take us down a dirt road next to a lake called Duck Lake, which is just outside St. Mary. I've mapped it a few times since then, trying to figure out what exactly went wrong, but now it seems to map correctly. Just in case, whenever you enter it into your mapping app, make sure it says St. Mary / East Glacier KOA. That one will get you to the right spot every time. Or just drive down to Duck Lake for the gorgeous view. But make sure there's plenty of room to turn around your rig before you pull off onto that dirt road.
That was a really pretty place, but I can tell you right away that it looked like a duck hunting camp to me. So, yeah, those are another one of those places you got to be careful. It kind of reminds me of a time we pulled out in a convenience store. We drug the plumbing off the back of the van, right? So prepare as you're driving with your van too. Kind of watch where you're going. Watch for those little fall offs off those roads because you can get in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, when we turned off the highway, it seemed a little weird because we were like, oh, it's on a dirt road. But then again, we've been on a KOA on a dirt road before.
Well, we go down a lot of dirt roads, right? So when we're driving around and looking for things, there's that's part of it, right? So getting off road and going and finding stuff all through all kinds of parks, you're going to hit dirt roads. So just be careful and know your clearance under your van and kind of watch what you're doing. It reminds me, everything in these parks is really wild, right? There is no, if you expect perfect roads, you expect things like that, you're going to be disappointed because it's all wild and anything can happen at any time.
That is for sure. As we got down the dirt road a little ways, it kind of started looking more like a driveway. and then we got a little concerned.
It's part of the adventure.
It totally is. But yeah, if your mapping app tries to take you to a KOA that looks like it's on the side of Duck Lake, just do something different because that's not the right one. You need to go on down the highway, not very far, maybe 5 miles, and then the KOA is actually down there. So
I've never been to one yet that didn't have good signage.
Yes.
That didn't make sense. So if it feels like it doesn't make sense, it's probably not the right place.
Yeah, that's a good rule of thumb. We need to remember that one next time. Well, back in episode 1, we told you about the beautiful views from the KOA campground in St. Mary. And if you're following us on social media, you've seen that I've posted a few of those pictures from the KOA campground. You can follow us on Facebook. We are Highways and Hilltops. And then on Instagram, we are Jody Charlie Keith. It's all one word with no spaces. So you can follow us on our social media. Also, we've got the podcast website live. It's www.highwaysandhilltops.com. I'll be putting up show notes on the website, so make sure that you're checking us out over there and keeping up with all of the great photos and things that we're sharing on the podcast website. St. Mary KOA is just a 4-minute drive from the east entrance to Glacier National Park. I laughed because one of my friends listened to the first episode and then she said, "It seems like y'all are sponsored by KOA." So let me be clear. We are not sponsored by KOA. However, KOA, we do love you. So if you would like to sponsor us, go right ahead.
Yeah, I think the reason we love them so much is they get us out of trouble, right? So I mentioned on the first podcast, I believe, that we sometimes just jump in the van and take off. And it really makes it easy and we're very spontaneous. So that's why we love it so much.
So to keep with our great, we're not sponsored by KOA, but we love it anyway theme, we're going to hit the high points of the St. Mary East Glacier KOA. It had awesome, exquisite views of the foothills of the Rocky Mountains.
This is this place is really great. I mean, it's not the fanciest big resort that there is, but with the pool, with the cabins, really love that big family cabin. So if we were there and we wanted to fly some family in or whatever, we could bring the whole family, like a family reunion or whatever. So huge 2-story cabins, a bunch of smaller cabins. The pool, I mentioned the store, it's got some good groceries and stuff, so you're not stuck anywhere.
Hey, one thing about those cabins at the KOA at St. Mary, the smaller cabins, I'm not sure if they have bathrooms or not. So if you choose to rent one of those, you might want to call ahead and check, because I saw a communal bathroom whenever we were walking around the park, and I believe that some of the bigger cabins do have bathrooms, but some of them are probably primitive, where they're pretty much a bed and a room. So
yeah, the good news is the bathrooms are really nice up there, right? So it's kind of weird if you haven't done it, but you go into the bathrooms and there's even a shower stall, right, where you bring some Crocs or something like that to keep your feet clean. But the bathrooms are clean, the showers are clean, lots of sinks in the bathroom. So I mean, there's always, even if there's not a bathroom in those cabins, you get by very, very easily.
yeah, it's usually a short walk up to the big bathrooms, but I did see a set of bathrooms that looked like they were specifically for the cabins as well. And he did bring up a good point about shower shoes. We just pack shower shoes. I mean, it's good practice. You do what you want.
I carry a backpack, and I put everything in it. And I don't like anything to touch the floor, I'm not going to lie. And they're clean. But it is kind of different to be using someone else's shower. But you got some good Crocs and you got your soaps and things like that. You can take a great shower at a KOA.
Yeah, you can.
And those lakes wrapped around that thing are beautiful. So the water was so clear, it's almost like you're just walking on the rocks. It's just gorgeous. And then all of those different aspen trees and stuff like that. And so, yeah, it makes the experience really nice just to be there close. This is the example of, we're not in the park yet, but it feels like it.
Oh, yeah. It was so perfect. It was cold enough for long sleeves in the evening, and there were still people in that pool.
I noticed it was heated. Did you notice that?
I didn't notice.
It was a heated pool. It has to be, right? Because it's never going to get hot up there, at least not that I'm aware of. So,
well, maybe we need to take our swimsuits next time. Also, remember how I said that you have to book early? Well, originally we had booked 3 days here, but if you recall from episode 1, when we got to Great Falls, we were just like 3 more hours to St. Mary. So, us being spontaneous like we are, we were like, why stay here if we can just get to the park? So I called the park, and he did have a primitive RV site, primitive meaning no sewer hookup, and he could fit us into that. When we got there, it was a nice, pretty small, mostly secluded little site tucked into a small grove of aspen trees. It was a short walk down to the St. Mary River, and that river is what creates the boundary on the back side of the campground. Remember that trail?
Yeah, so it was really cool. So we got our van set up in that little spot. It was really glady, and there was lots of those trees. And so all the primitive spots were kind of down in the woods. And then there were some spots that were up on top that were, for bigger rigs, and they were clear. But, we hit those trails. As soon as we got set up, we hit those trails and started cooking and walking those lakes. And I think we walked all the way around. There's a trail that was all the way around the lakes and all the way around the park. We came back. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it's really beautiful. I've got a great picture of the St. Mary River running beside the campground from the trail. It's just long enough that it kind of feels spooky if you don't take your bear spray.
That is the whole deal with all of these trips. You are in bear country, and for me, I just love it. But it does change things. So when we backed that van in there and we got set up, and we started cooking and everything. We were cooking on a picnic table, and we were in the trees and in this glady stuff, and I won't lie, I had to walk around a little bit and kind of kick some brush, kind of before I started cooking, because I was like, the last thing I want to do is smell good, you know what I mean, and be in this glady stuff. But that's part of the fun of it. Yeah,
for real. That brings us to a good point about food safety in bear country. So I know we did a drive-by mention in episode 1 about cooking and dealing with your food in bear country, but it's worth a little more education for those that maybe haven't ever visited bear country before, because there are some really important safety issues that you have to think about. Number 1, food storage.
Yeah, so when we stopped we mentioned stopping at the Walmart and stocking up, because we're in the North Country, right, and there's just no place to get anything. We talked about planning meals too, right? You have to have meals that are pretty easy to clean up, because you don't have a lot of access to, I mean, you got to have your sinks and stuff like that, don't get me wrong, but what you don't do is drip any grease on the ground. You just don't leave anything that, could attract a bear. If you don't know, you don't attract a bear, because what happens, he gets in the habit of coming, and next thing you know, they have to kill him, right?
Yes.
So that's the last thing you want to be, is that person that caused that. But anyway, we planned some meals right there in that little spot. When you clean those up, you kind of wipe your skillets out and you put things in bags. There's always dumpsters up by the main KOA, and they're always locked. So they have these bars across the top, and so you put your trash and stuff back in the dumpsters, but they're locked. They can't get in there to them. So as long as they don't get to it, as long as they're not licking up grease after you or something like that, and you keep your food inside, and you keep it in the refrigerator or keep it in dry storage, you're usually pretty good. But you're just way more alert and more, very careful with what you're doing than you normally would cooking anywhere else.
You just need to create a habit of being very particular about how you store your food inside your RV. Now, we don't tent camp, and I'm thinking that there's a whole discussion around how you do your food storage when you're tent camping. If any of our listeners out there are well versed at tent camping in bear country, and you want to drop a note in our DMs with any tips and tricks that you have for storing your food while you're tent camping, we will be happy to shout you out and pass your information along. Number 2, trash.
You clean up the trash every time, right? So you cook, you clean, you pick up, you put everything away, you haul your trash off every time. You never leave it outside. You'll see nobody doing that. Everybody really knows what they're doing typically, because I imagine it only takes one bear event for you to learn that really well. So, all that being said, though, we do eat very well, right? So I was thinking of the meal we had that day in this little glady spot. It was really like I could probably reach 10 feet on either side of the table, and it was, I don't know what you call it, like the glady grass and the aspens. Anything could have stepped out of there at any time. So it's not just bears. There's, the elk and the moose and even the smaller animals. But that evening we got some iron skillets out. We got our Coleman stove out. We had fried potatoes, and we had iron skillet ribeyes. We eat really, really well. We just clean up. And also, it's kind of funny while you're eating, you kind of have one eye, over each other's shoulders, right? It's just kind of a weird thing. If you've ever cooked on a Coleman stove and you're cooking those fresh fried potatoes with purple onions and cornmeal and black pepper, it really is fragrant out there. That's what makes it so much fun, but it will make you kind of look over your shoulder for bears.
It will do that for sure. Everything from food wrappers to your nasty bathroom trash, it's like candy to a hungry bear. So you can't just tie it up and leave it in the back of your truck or sitting out by your RV, tent, or cabin thinking you're going to take it to the dumpster in the morning.
Do you want to tell them about the guests we did get from that space? So we ended up moving to another space right up the hill because we had reservations for those. But this was, we kind of messed around, got there a day early, and ended up in the spot. But we did pick up one animal down there in the aspens, down in the woods, I guess you would say. And then we moved up the hill and set up on our new spot. And we were laying there that night and about half asleep, and I seen something run across the floor by the dog food. And I seen this piece of dog food just take off and go the other way. And I'm like, what in the world was that? Well, I kind of figured, right? And so anyway, I'll let you tell the story, but this was a kind of a fun story.
Oh my goodness. It was fun for you, maybe. Not so fun for me. Well, mind you, we had driven around all day, by the way, before we got back to camp. So we left the little glady area, and then we went driving for our first day at going to the Sun Road. And then we came back, parked the van. Weston had gone to shower down at the camp shower, and we were kind of kicked back waiting for our turn to go shower. Next thing I know, Charles says, hey, I think there's a mouse in your dog food. So we first decided that we're going to try to run the mouse out the door because we don't have a trap. Mind you, we have a dog. It's a Jack Russell Terrier. Why in the world he didn't find the mouse, I don't know. I think they're supposed to be mouse-finding kind of dogs. But he was being lazy or whatever. So I scoop him up. Charles runs out the side door of the van, around to the driver's side, yanks the driver's side door open, and I'm hitting the driver's side seat trying to get the mouse to run out. And I'm saying, "Did you see him?" We sat there for just a second, and I see him zoom to the passenger side. So I said, "No, there he goes to the passenger side." So he runs around the front of the van, jerks the passenger side door open. I'm hitting the passenger side seat, trying to get this mouse to leave the van. Suddenly, we lose him. We don't know where he's at. We think maybe he went outside, maybe he didn't. We don't know. So we go back over there, kind of settle in. We decide not to tell Weston about the mouse because
he's sleeping above the mouse. He's got his foam mattress, and it's all across the front seats, and it's right under him. So
yeah, we haven't told you about the sleeping arrangement, but Weston spreads out a pallet of sorts across the front 2 seats, and the little footstool that the dog bed lays on kind of becomes the middle. And we have a foam pad that we put up there, and he thinks it's comfortable, or so he says. But anyway, that's where he sleeps. Well, the mouse was under those seats. So I knew if we told him, we would not get any sleep. And there was nowhere to get a mouse trap. It was too late. So finally, we just decided we're going to have to go to bed. There's nothing we can do until tomorrow. Weston comes back. We're super quiet about the mouse. We're laying there. I can't really go to sleep. I hear something going, chicka, 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 chicka. And I had a Walmart sack hanging from a hook right behind the driver's seat. And I kind of wake up or open my eyes and lean up and look over there. Well, the dog food was sitting right underneath the Walmart sack, and it was a bag of dog food with like a Velcro closure. That mouse was standing on top of that Velcro closure, picking at the dog food, trying to get into the dog food bag. So I say, "Charles, there's the mouse." And he says, "There's nothing we can do about it. It's like 11 o'clock now. There's nothing we can do about it. We'll have to do it tomorrow." So I'm laying over there with all my anxiety over this mouse going crazy, thinking, okay, I'm going to move the dog food over by the door. And then when he tries to get into the dog food again, I'll yank the door open, kick the dog food bag out, and out will go the mouse. Well, it didn't really happen that way. So finally, I decide I'm just going to have to go to bed. I've done all I can do. I moved the dog food over by the door. Hopefully the mouse will stay over there. So later that night, I hear the mouse again. I wake up and I'm sleeping with my phone so that I can flashlight him because I was really scared that he was going to get off the cabinet and onto my bed. By this time, the dog is tired of me because I've raised up a few times looking for this mouse. So he moves over to get on Charles's bed at some point. And then a little while later, I feel something on my feet. And I was like, oh, that must be the dog. And then it dawned on me that the dog wasn't sleeping with me anymore.
All bets are off when the mice start running across your feet. It's time to go into action. So
I reach down, get my flashlight, pull it up real fast, just in time to see him look at me, and he's on top of my blanket running across my feet. Ah! He jumps up, runs up onto the cabinet at the end of my bed, and then takes off back down over by the driver's seat, of course, where Weston's at, but don't tell him. I yell at Charles again. "Charles, he's back. He was on my feet." And he's like, "There's nothing we can do about it. It's 4 o'clock in the morning."
So we decided we would set a trap for him, and it was just a box. In my mind, I could lay that box down, put some dog food in it. When the mouse ran up in there, I was going to grab it and roll it up and throw it outside.
Yes.
So that's what we did. We went back to sleep with one eye open. But you can lure a mouse into a box. You can roll the top up, and you can whack him if you have to, and you can get rid of your mouse. By the way, I rolled that mouse up in that box, throw it outside, and we go back to bed. It gets real quiet. We're laying still, and all of a sudden, there's the mouse. And I'm like, how many mice did we pick up down here? Well, come to find out, it was one mouse. We fought all night long, but I finally won the fight, and I got him. So,
yeah.
So, anyway, as bad as that sounds, I had to get rid of the mouse. There was non-negotiable. He can't run across our feet all night long. So.
No. I made him go check the box, and he was gone. So the second time we caught him, by now Weston is into the whole mix.
And he's getting very crafty. The mouse is getting better at the game by this point because he's already been rolled up in a box. He's already been whacked. So this time it's one more chance to catch the mouse.
Charles shook him, and Weston was like, "I know he's in here this time." And Weston said, "Okay, I'll walk him to the dumpster."
Yeah, he was gone.
Yeah, so that was our crazy mouse story. We did pick him up down there in the little wooded area. So that's about the only thing I would say I didn't like about the wooded area.
Well, it kind of brings a point that you're gonna need glue strips, right? I mean, it's as weird as it sounds. And we even went into some other parks, and some rangers were telling us that there's other things you can pick up, right? So you kind of have to watch for that. I mean, check your cabinets, have some goose strips, because you definitely can pick stuff up, which is weird. You would think there's no place for them to hide, but there's a million places for them to hide. So
Yeah, and I learned the hard way that the KOA camp store does not have mouse traps. We had to go to the grocery store to get a mouse trap, and now we just keep one in the van. Something to think about is cell phone service. It was really good at the front of this KOA in St. Mary, but really spotty on the first night when we were down in the woods. Also, we were kind of far from the camp Wi-Fi, and so we didn't have a very strong signal. Kept going in and out, and we weren't really able to use it for streaming.
well, you're everything's Wi-Fi, right? So you can use your phones that way if you're working, television, whatever. Really looking forward to trying. We tried Starlink at home, and I'm really looking forward to Starlink Mobile on the van. And if it's anything like home, it's going to be fantastic. It's a game changer. Hopefully, the Starlink Mobile is going to be fantastic. More to come on that, because we're definitely going to get that thing installed someday.
Yeah, for sure. So just keep that in mind. And again, it really did depend on where you were, because when we left that little wooded spot and moved up to the front, we had 5G on our cell phone service in that KOA.
You bring that up, but if you remember when we got stuck down Duck Road and we were trying to map out of there, we lost cell service. So you don't have maps, you don't have anything, right? So even on your hiking trails, so it's definitely something to think about.
I'm going to jump back on my bear soapbox just for a minute, because I have a couple more things to say before we leave this topic. Number one, think about your trail trash. So whenever you decide to go on a hike, even if it's a short day hike, be sure to keep a pocket open in your backpack for empty snack wrappers. If your trail's long enough that you need water or a snack, you also need a pack. So pack in and pack out, that's kind of the rule. Leave it like you found it. You don't want a bunch of trash on the trail. If you go to the national parks and you enjoy them like we do, it's part of the charge to help keep those things clean. And again, we don't want bears eating food wrappers, because that's what brings them into campgrounds or parking lots or where people have food stored. So we all have a part to play in keeping everybody safe. And if you'll do your part and we'll do our part, then we can enjoy these parks for a very, very long time.
And by the way, you don't see trash. This is one of the most pristine, untouched places, right? It's just beautiful. I think you don't, because you'll find people will police you as well. I mean, people are very serious about this. And like we talked about earlier, how economical it is for families to go to these parks and stuff. And you'll find if someone's doing something, we've seen some people do some weird things on the trails, and man, people call you out. They're watching you. I mean, it's a serious business. So don't feel like you're going to see any trash, because I have yet to see any trash. People police themselves very well.
Yeah, part of the appeal in visiting and preserving our national parks is that excitement of getting to see wildlife in their natural habitat. But if we want to protect that opportunity to do so, we all have to be educated about and follow the rules that are in place. Protect both man and beast. These are wild animals. They're not domesticated. If you're the one that feeds them, you may very well be the reason that they injure or kill someone. The rules have been designed to protect you. They've been put in place from hard lessons learned at the expense, many times, of human life. If you think the food and trash safety is just a bunch of hubbub and you don't understand what all the fuss is about, go read Jack Olson's book, Night of the Grizzlies.
Don't do it right before you're camping your first night in the park, but yeah, it's crazy.
Maybe that book will help you understand why the National Park Service takes this so seriously, and why you should too. In fact, I recommend anyone planning to visit grizzly bear country should read that book. Again, maybe not right before you go. But I wouldn't want you to read it to make you scared, but to make you smart. Because grizzly bears can be dangerous.
And not just bears. So let's be honest, you're not going to see a bear on every hike, right? But I can't tell you the times I've came around a corner and be standing face to face with an elk or a moose or maybe a mule deer or whatever. And they're pretty, they can be pretty docile as long as you keep some spaces from them. I mean, there's all kinds of reading you can get on, what to do in moose encounters and things like that. I remember once we were walking down a trail and we seen a moose and one of her young. And they said that when that happens, you just step over behind a tree because they can't see real well. And you could step out and she would get kind of aggressive, and you could step back over behind that tree, and she'd kind of calm down. Of course, we backed away because we were going to have to cross a stream right by her to get down the trail. We just backed away and let them alone. But it was awesome to see. But there's lots of things like the wolves. Depending on where you're at up north, I mean, there's just all kinds of animals. It's not an amusement park. There's so many people that are used to that. As a matter of fact, I mean, what about all the safety walking on the edges of those cliffs and those? You're talking about huge water here, like swift, deep, swift moving water.
Dangerous
and
water.
So, just take safety precautions and be smart. Don't be the one that everybody talks about. There has been a lot of people die on these trails, and not from animals, but from falling or drowning. So.
Yep. That being said, you do need to take bear spray. If you plan to hike in grizzly country, you've got to have it. You can purchase it at most of the park visitor centers. The KOA gift shop will have it. The grocery stores will have it in and around the park. If you're staying on the west side of the park or you plan to drive going to the Sun Road from the east entrance all the way over to Apgar Visitor Center, they actually rent bear spray at Apgar. And that was the first time we'd ever seen that.
It's a little bit expensive, and that seemed like a good deal, renting it. And keeping it fresh, for that matter, right? So you go year after year and you wonder if it's fresh. So
yeah, for sure. I would definitely call about the availability before I headed that way, just in case they're all out. We didn't rent it, so I don't really know what that availability looks like, but I would assume they keep quite a bit of it on hand. But like you said, it could be $50-$60 to buy a can of bear spray, and I think they were renting it for $10. And you just bring it back.
Do you remember walking down the trail and seeing the snakes at eye level?
Yes.
So that's another thing. It's like most of your hunters know when they're walking in the woods, they watch where they're going. If you watch, it's not a big deal. But we were walking around the corner, and there was kind of a bluff, and there was a hole in that bluff, and there were some snakes, and they were right at eye level. And we watched people run down through there. Some of those people hike so fast.
They do.
And to me, it just seems like a danger because you could step on something. But we tend to hike a little slower. And I just sit there and watched how many people walk by that bluff and never seen those snakes. And then you walked up and I said, look right there, there's some snakes you can see. And they were right at high level. And so, it's just something to think about. You are absolutely in a wild place.
Yeah, by the way, I had already walked by those snakes once because I was up ahead of him filming the water that was rushing by in the creek for my mom so I could send her a video. And then when I came back, he pointed, and I almost peed my pants, to be honest, y'all.
And they weren't dangerous snakes. They weren't big snakes, but they were snakes.
And there were two of them right there together.
Yeah.
And I have a video of them. So be sure and go over to our website, highwaysandhilltops.com, and you'll be able to watch that video of the snakes. Woo! Talk about giving somebody chill bumps.
They were pretty harmless. There's a lot of water there, but usually that swift moving water is not so bad. But I've yet to see like a really dangerous snake. I know they're there. I've yet to see a rattlesnake or anything like that, or any big copperheads. Those were I don't know what kind they were, but they were pretty harmless.
Yeah, I don't know either, but it was a snake, and it was right at my head level, and I walked right by it and never saw it the first time.
Most of your hikes have lots of people going in and out every day, right? And so the deer kind of just quit looking and they paying attention, and it's kind of like you can walk back and forth. The farther you get back in the backcountry, that's where things begin to change, I believe. So again, most of your parking lot trails are pretty heavy trails. They're easily marked. You can see your way. You're probably not getting a lot of trouble there. But the farther we went, the farther you get back in the backcountry, things you can really tell it changes.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. I can't remember which hike that was, but I bet we'll get to it here pretty soon in our notes. But yeah, that snake day was a little bit crazy, and I'll post the video that I made for my mom, and then at the very end of it is where I'm walking back and Charles is pointing to the snakes, and then I just panned my camera over there. Whew. Man, it still makes my heart race to think that I walked right by them at head level and never even saw them there. And I will admit, that's the first time that I ever thought about snakes in Yellowstone or Glacier, because I am so focused on grizzly bears and the big things, I forgot about little things.
Yeah, when you're hiking those trails, it's so pretty. You get kind of mesmerized. You're focused on this, that, or the other. And just a good safety tip. I mean, that's why I'm always after you guys slow down. We have all day. And also the slower speed helps me. We're not near as fatigued. It's amazing how far we can hike at that speed and be safe. And we go for miles, right? And we're not necessarily young and great in shape, but it's not a problem. But I think some of those people are speed walkers. That's kind of the habit at home in the neighborhoods, right? That's what it looks like. I would caution, be careful if you're going to be following somebody like that, because you can get onto something.
Hopefully someday we can get a ranger on the pod and we'll talk about all things bear safety and animal safety, because there's like a whole host of things like, what do you do if you see a mountain lion? Or what do you do if you come face to face with a grizzly or an elk or a bison? And even badgers. We saw badgers on the trail at Yellowstone. Remember that? Those things can be really mean.
I will tell you, of all the things to see in the woods, those badgers probably scared me more than about anything. Those things, you could tell he was vicious. There was very little room to play and crowd him. But as a general rule, if you're not crowding any animal, you're in pretty good shape. Of course, we're by no means rangers, but I'm just saying we've noticed that if we back away, we leave them alone. We just had very few problems, or any problems for that matter.
Yeah, for sure. Well, folks, that's going to do it for episode 2 of Highways and Hilltops. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Highways and Hilltops, Instagram at Jody Charlie Keith, all one word, and go visit our website for all the goodies at www.highwaysandhilltops.com. If you're loving our podcast, go ahead and hit the follow button on your podcast app. That way, you'll be notified when we drop new episodes. And don't miss next week's episode, Glacier National Park Part 2. It's jam-packed full of need-to-know information if you plan to visit the park soon. We're going to talk about park tech, shuttles, maps, and the oh-so-confusing world of park passes. Until next week, travel safe, and we hope you get to explore something new this week. Bye, friends.